Good afternoon, gearheads. Welcome to your Sunday night with Speed City special Super Sunday edition early. Thanks for joining us early. This is Jon Massengale. I'm in the studio in Austin, Texas, and I'm joined by Bob Varsha and Jonathan Green. And I'll start with you, Bob. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, thanks. 70 degrees here in Atlanta, at least for now. And every day that goes by brings us closer to the start of the Formula One season. So,
That's right. We're getting excited. Johnny Green, you're still down in New Zealand for a few more hours.
Yes, we've wrapped up the series, and talking of Formula One, we did crown a bona fide super license points holder now. So we have the connection. And behind me, my shot is of the track that we just raced, Highlands Motorsport Park, one of the most beautiful in the world. And we finished it off with the 69th running of the Grand Prix.
We're going to hear all about that. We're going to talk all about that. The Castrol Toyota Formula Oceania Championship. We're going to talk some Formula One. There's some fun Formula One stories that we're going to talk about. And we're going to talk a little Super Bowl to start with. I want to talk about the fact that that Fox is going to air, I think, 4 spots in the Super Bowl. Of course, they are hosting the Super Bowl on Fox Television, but they're going to spend some of their own money and to promote IndyCar. I don't know if you guys saw that there was a new IndyCar commercial. They've had the ones that have been dropping the last few weeks. They did the one with Joseph Newgarden and the Tom Brady. And this week,
Alex Palou.
Yeah, Alex Palou. And then this week they dropped the PATA Award one. So they're going to be spending money they could have made. I don't know what's a Super Bowl ad cost these days, Bob, you know, a couple $1,000,000?
$8 million for 30 seconds.
Wow. Wow.
So how long is the Speed City advert?
I sent them the check and we'll see what we get. I think it's going to be 1 millisecond and it'll air between the other commercials. No, but that's pretty cool that IndyCar is Fox is going to help promote IndyCar. They're well done commercials. You seen them, Greeny, down there?
I've seen the Joseph Newgarden ones. That's the only one I've seen.
Well, the Palou one was really good too. They've all been
cool.
Really pretty slickly done. I thought they were pretty well done. And
well, that raises a good point. Jonathan, what television do you see down there? Do you get Fox or ESPN or any of the big internationals?
It's a real smorgasbord. Obviously, you've got 3 local channels. I say local, but national channels, TV1, TV2, and TV3. Or TVNZ1, 2, and then TV3, which are separate companies, a bit like BBC and ITV in the UK. Cable TV obviously is more popular. Fox is big down here, which is known as it is known as Fox too, but it's called Sky here, and obviously they have a lot of product from Sky in the UK, and it's a News Corp company. So you have Sky News and you have Sky Sport, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of repeat from the UK, a lot of older shows from the UK. But we do, and CNN is popular, obviously, as being an international news provider. So you get, and Al Jazeera is popular here too. So you get a kind of a crossover. But we've been seeing the Super Bowl is live on the national channels starting at 12 o'clock today.
Cool. Yeah, I guess so. All over the world.
Will they see IndyCar?
Yes, they do. IndyCar is shown on Sky Sport throughout the season. And I think they also show NASCAR as well. But IndyCar definitely very popular here. Obviously, Scott Dixon's still at the top of his game. And and now with Indy Next, with a whole bunch of Kiwis, I think that's going to be even more popular this year.
Cool.
Well, Greeny, I know you can't stay the whole show because you got to catch a flight out. So let's talk about the Formula Oceania down there in New Zealand because, man, this is I saw Chris Medlin tweeting about it, and I said, okay, Lindblad has hit the radar for everybody, and we've been saying, how long have we been saying it, Jonathan? Watch this series to watch the next Formula One drivers, and I think Lindblad has pretty much secured that. I mean, I'm not saying this year, but who knows? We could see him in a car. When do you think that could happen?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I wouldn't be surprised. Well, you'll see him in FP1 for sure,
Yeah.
because he now has the 40 points he needed to get 18 points, and that's the attraction. To be able to get 18 super license points in 5 weeks for whoever wins the championship is a huge opportunity. You know, it takes 8 months, and you keep those points for over 3 years. So, you know, anybody wanting to gain super license points, and by the way, it goes down to the top 9. So the runner-up got 14 points. The third place, which was an American, Nikita Johnson, got 12 license points. So it is a very prestigious championship in that respect. Historically, 26 drivers who graduated from TRS, Toyota Series, have got to Formula One, and currently 13 drivers in IndyCar and Indy Next, all are graduates of the series. So, you know, it remains at the top of its game, but this year was totally dominated by the Brit you just mentioned, Arvid Lindblad.
Wow.
In fact, I saw Lindblad's name. I was reading about, you know, the situation at Red Bull with their junior series drivers and so forth, the pipeline getting clogged. And that was the first time I saw Arvid Lindblad's name mentioned in connection with the big organization and the fact that he's going to Formula 2. But the implication was that, as inexperienced as he might be, and as good as he obviously is, he's going to put pressure on you know, some of the guys in that pipeline to leapfrog them to a potential F1 race seat.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. We've always said when Lando came down here, or Lance Stroll, oh, they're on their way to Formula One. Well, this kid literally he's doing Formula 2 in Australia in 2 weeks' time, as we all know, or in a couple of weeks' time. And he's going to be driving for Campos. He's just 17. His rise is about as quick as Verstappen, because he's gone from F4 to FR, FIA, F3, and now F2 this season, as well as winning both the Macau Grand Prix and, of course, this championship. But yeah, you're absolutely right. The big news was a couple of weeks ago, you saw that Yuki Tsunoda was given the reserve role for Red Bull after his test, and obviously he is an RB driver, but they haven't announced a reserve driver for RB. So with the consummate 40 points that Arvid has picked up, he effectively is quids on to be that reserve driver. So we will see him in action on Fridays. And if Isaac Hadjar, or there's a penalty problem for Verstappen, and Yuki has to replace him for some reason, or Lawson has a problem, whatever might happen. Any of those 4 drivers, there's a problem, and you could well see Lindblad, who will have to get a dispensation. He's only 17, but that's happened before. But you may well see him in a race seat.
When's his birthday?
You know what? I think it's May.
Okay, I was just thinking, when will he be 18?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I think he turns 18.
August.
I think it's like
August
yeah,
8th.
August. Sorry,
So,
yeah, that's what it was. So, in other words, if it happened, because there is a serious side to this, which is Verstappen has 8 penalty points, and if he starts swearing a lot and giving the FIA trouble, which he's wont to do, he could get more. And 12 is a ban, as Magnussen had, and so you know it could become a reality. But like you say, like Antonelli had to get that dispensation, and of course before him, Max. I think it's possible if they really do need a racing driver with 40 points.
Yeah, this is really, I mean, and it's too bad, Jonathan, that he just is lacking in confidence, isn't it? It's really a shame.
Yeah, he won 4 of the 5 trophies, and the trophies are for the feature races, the third race, the longest race of each weekend. And that's never been done in history. He went for the 5th one, which is the Grand Prix, and it carries 3 or 4 trophies. But at the prize giving last night, he didn't win the Grand Prix, but he did pick up another 3 trophies for his strength in numbers, as it were. He really dominated, but we kind of expected it. And actually not a bad thing, because the whole point of this series is to see where you stand against the best in the world. So the youngsters that were racing against him, you know, really got to see where they pan out in the world sphere, as it were.
Yeah, and speaking of seeing where you stand, remember Will Brown, who won the New Zealand Grand Prix last night? He came to this series thinking, hey, I want to see where I stand against Arvid Lindblad. He came out and said it right off the bat.
Yeah, and to be honest, hats off to both Will Brown, who is the supercar champion for Red Bull and Triple Eight, and his teammate Brock Feeney, a 22-year-old Australian, because really they put their reputations on the line. That's the equivalent of, you know, somebody like Kyle Larson going to IndyCar and doing the Indy 500. It's a reputational thing because it can all go horribly wrong and you look stupid. Jimmy Johnson didn't really, you know, cover himself in glory going to IndyCar. And I'm, you know, a big fan of Jimmy Johnson. So they put their reputations on the line, but lo and behold, the Grand Prix front row was the two Red Bulls. We called it the running of the Bulls. And it was Will Brown and Brock Feeney who got qualifying, and they out-qualified the entire field who'd been racing for 5 weeks. So pretty darned impressive. And as you said, Will Brown went on to make history, first Australian since 1975 to win the Grand Prix and as the current supercar champion. So really, really impressive.
Are there more points for that Grand Prix? And is it different? Is it more laps or anything?
Yeah, it's more laps. There's not any more points in the terms of the championship, but there's more laps. So it becomes a little bit of and we do the Formula One qualifying situation where you know, it's a knockout thing of 3 Q1, Q2, Q3, which usually we just do 2 qualifying sessions, one for race 1 and one for race 3. Whereas the Grand Prix, so you only get 2 sets of tires for each weekend. So you've got to kind of manage how you're going to attack both qualifying and then 3 races. But they did a great job, and Will Brown was superb because he didn't do the whole season. He went back to Bathurst, took 4th place at Bathurst, and came back.
Well, it was fun to watch Nikita Johnson because remember we had him on right at the beginning, and we showed an interview, a recorded interview with Arvid Lindblad, and you could see him bristling, and he was going, "Hey, I'm going for the championship here too." And he missed it by like 6 points, the second position.
He was on the podium. Lindblad got 3rd in the Grand Prix and was closing in. Nikita was neck and neck with the local 17-year-old driver, Zach Schooler, who's been the big surprise of the season. He's going back to Europe to GB3. And Nikita actually will be up against him. But Nikita, just 16, missed out by, like you say, just a few points on getting that runner-up spot, but did get a race win over the weekend. So he did finish, you know, in a bit of glory. And definitely, guys, one to watch. He's racing for High Tech this season, and he's going to be at St. Pete. He's doing 4 Indy Next races. And obviously, if you know your junior formula, you'll know that High Tech is owned by Ollie Oakes, who is the team principal of Alpine. So don't be surprised if the next announcement for an Alpine junior, once due and settles in or doesn't, is Nikita Johnson.
Yeah, he's just 8 points out of 2nd place. And Zach Scholar is the essentially the rookie of the year. He picked up an early trophy this year, the Tasman, I believe. So he's the real deal.
Yeah, no question. And to be honest, the Americans were really, really good. Just to give you an example, Josh Pearson left to do the Indy test at Laguna Seca and was top 5 in that behind Dennis Hauger, who's an ex-Red Bull junior himself and has been in F2, won FIA F3, and he's going to be one of the favorites, as is a former champion of this series down here, Callum Hedge. Tommy Smith of Australia also took part in that test, and last year's winner of the Grand Prix, Liam Skeet. So you're gonna, if you watch Indy on the road to Indy, you're going to see a lot of the names that were down here this year.
Hey, Greenie, I know you got to catch this flight, so I want to get this one story in before you leave us, because I know you're going to be as excited as I was about this when I saw the news that there is going to be a new earlier start time for the Las Vegas Grand Prix, moving up 2 hours. In other words, we're not going to have to do it on Japanese time this year.
Yeah, I never understood that for lots of different reasons. By the time we went racing in Vegas, it was already midnight on the East Coast, which doesn't seem to make sense to me for an American Grand Prix. It's early morning for Europe, but still very early morning. And I don't know why we're pandering to that audience on that particular Grand Prix, and more importantly, to the fans out in the grandstands. And obviously, we're sitting right on top of them or right next to them when we're there. You know, it's really cold at that time of year, and not a comfortable place to sit and watch a Grand Prix at midnight at night, you know, in freezing almost or near freezing conditions. So, yeah, I'm really pleased that they've changed it. I think it's sensible.
Yeah, I think it's I think the later start time had something to do with the casinos and their vote over on the strip. But I think by now, spectacular success after success has brought influence for the Formula One crowd and the Las Vegas Grand Prix. So I'm with you, Jonathan. Even though you are the Energizer Bunny of the pit lane, there's no doubt about it. Um, eight o'clock is much more civilized time to start that puppy.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I think there's several reasons. I mean, for one, Bob, like you said, I actually checked the Las Vegas news stations, and of course, the big story was, oh, well, this is going to make it worse for the businesses. And yes, you're never going to please everybody. Somebody's not. We saw it here in Austin. Some of the bars and restaurants and hotels complain because of this and that and the other. But the fact that everybody in the paddock, literally everybody, drivers, talking about how they're completely thrown off. I mean, all the journalists, everybody, it was crazy. And of course, the ESPN television ratings were way down compared to what you would expect. I mean, they were way below Miami, way below Miami, and even below Austin. Miami had some really big numbers the first few seasons. But so the numbers on ESPN are probably going to get better. I mean, the East Coast, there's nobody up watching it at 4 a.m. when it finished or whenever it was at the race was over. So I can't imagine that the ratings didn't play into a part of it as well.
Probably.
Well, we're going to take our break, Greenie. I know you got to go to get on a flight. Thank you, sir. We'll see you back in Austin next week, and we'll see everybody else right after the break. All right, on YouTube, Johnny Bravo is getting some stuff done, or Bravo Johnny, excuse me. He is cleaning gearboxes. What are you cleaning, Johnny? What kind of gearboxes? I got to know that. You can't just drop that without telling us what you're cleaning. Hey, I got a question for Corvette Mike. Mike, I saw a news story about like a GM vendor, one of their normal shippers, stopped shipping. They're making them unload the Corvettes from the trucks. I just stumbled across that. I don't know what news site or whatever. So, Mike, you got to know the scoop on that. And unless he's going to be auspiciously quiet, and that's who he works for, but
diplomatically quiet, yeah.
Yeah, but I think it was just this one shipping vendor they used that were having trouble with. I think they said that Ford also had trouble too. So,
which side of the border were they? Were they in Canada? The tariff nonsense really threw a wrench into the works for a while.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's see what Corvette Mike says. Yeah, it was like Kevin Kelly said. Yeah. All right, here we go. Coming back.
Hi, this is Karun Chandok, and you're listening to Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
All right, before we get back into racing, we're going to talk a little more football. Bob, what are you going to do for the Super Bowl? You have big plans? Do you have pizzas on the way? What are you and your wife going to do?
Actually, we're gonna play it low key like we did at New Year's this year. It's it'll be interesting. We want to see the ads, all that kind of stuff, but it's a commitment, and I really have no stake in the outcome. So we'll see. I'll tune in.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
I used to be a huge NFL fan when I was growing up and kid and everything. I would not have ever missed it. Huge Cowboys fan, but ever since
how about them Cowboys?
Ever since that guy who left the Cowboys, I have not been following the Cowboys as closely. So
it's I may get out my stopwatch and time how long Donald Trump actually stays at the game.
You're fired.
I saw a terrific article. I wish I could remember the sports columnist who wrote it, but it was basically about how Donald Trump can't win this. He said the only city in America that hates Donald Trump more than New York is Philadelphia. So Trump's going to want no part of a Philadelphia victory. But if the Chiefs win, he's got to deal with the Taylor Swift effect, and the fact that she'll probably be on camera more than he will. So, it's a no-win situation for
It's all fake
for the
news.
Donald. We'll see where it goes.
Casey is queued up and ready for you. All right, we're
Man, he
not
is
talking
both
any more
barrels.
politics. We're not going to let politics invade our motorsports world.
Yeah, we're talking sports.
I know. But I am going to my in-laws and probably do
culture.
the same thing, Bob. I'll probably watch the ads closer than I'll watch the game. I'm kind of a Patrick Mahomes fan. I mean, just because he seems like a regular guy. But it'll be interesting to see Tom Brady too, talking about somebody who could be breaking one of his records.
Yeah, and he's this is his rookie season, as it were. He hasn't even done a full season of the NFL, and now he's going to do a Super Bowl.
Yeah,
that's. I'll bet he's going to have some butterflies going into that.
Well, it doesn't hurt that he's won 7 on his own, or something like that.
Right, just can flash his rings the whole time. Oh, by the way, have you seen? Speaking of football, the Manning cast, the musical.
Yeah. Oh no.
Have you? Oh, you got to check it out. It's on YouTube. It's hilarious.
No, I haven't. I thought you meant the Manning cast.
See how many people you recognize. See how? Yeah, that's what I mean. Manning cast, the musical. Total fabrication, huge production value. They must have spent a fortune on this, and everybody you've ever heard of is in this doggone thing. So check it out. It's very funny.
No, I thought you meant the Manning cast that the Manning brothers do on football.
That's it.
Okay.
That's it.
Yeah,
Thing opens with the brothers sitting there saying, "Well, we're about to do another season of the Manning cast. We need something new and fresh." And they turn to Archie, the dad, who's sitting there. Say, "Dad, you got any ideas?" And says, "Yeah, Tony." And the brothers look at each other and say, "Tony, that's it. We'll try to win a Tony for the Broadway musical." And Archie's like, no, that's not what I meant. So, and it all takes off from there. So,
well, they've gotten better at that. That when they first started the Manning cast thing, it was so awkward I could barely watch it. But they've kind of found a rhythm, just like a lot of them. But all right, we're going to come back around to Formula One now, because I was talking ratings a while ago. And by the way, we are going to get to talk about Lewis Hamilton. I saw somebody in the chat talk about that. I'm super excited to talk about that. But ratings is what I was talking about earlier. I mentioned ESPN, but Netflix, the story has come out that Netflix is interested in becoming a new media rights partner for Formula One from 2026 on. And the headline, in fact, I'm reading the Chris Medlin's article on Racer, and the headline is Netflix in the mix, because that is really the way I think this needs to be talked about, because they're interested in becoming the new media partner or a new media partner. Because I was thinking about this in the last couple of days. And you know how, Bob, speaking of the NFL again, but you know how they've done it. It's not just, used to be where they would give, back in the old days, they'd give the AFC to one network, the NFC to another network, and then Monday Night Football to another network, and then Sunday Night Football. Well, they've changed all that, right? So you can watch some of the games on Netflix, on Amazon and different networks all over the place. Well, I think that's what could potentially happen with Formula One, in the fact that we could get, maybe ESPN sticks with most of the broadcasts, but then Netflix picks up some of them. And I don't know that. I'm just speculating. That was just a guess. What do you think?
I kind of doubt it, and I could be wrong. NASCAR, for example, has done that same thing. They've got races on a half dozen different networks, and it's really causing confusion and some annoyance. And the reason, I think, is basically money. It's just too expensive to take a whole season. Just look at the race cars. It's too expensive to sponsor a car for the whole season, so you get different liveries all the time. I think that's a real danger of confusing fans about where the race is this weekend. Formula One's already been through that. What time is the race on? Where is it? What number is going to be on? Now, I think if they get it, they're going to keep it. And I'll add something else. They have recently hired away a woman named Kate Jackson, who supervised Formula One coverage for ESPN. And now she's working for Netflix. I've been in touch with her. I think they've got a comprehensive plans for this because they're not only doing this for Formula One. They want other sports. They want boxing. They want, when they can get in, I suppose, into the four big sports here in the United States: football, baseball, basketball, and hockey. But one step at a time. And right now, Netflix is the monster of streaming television, and I'm sure they've got a war chest that they can use to gather up all of these rights. And I would think that Formula One would want a one network. Like take IndyCar. IndyCar went from NBC to Fox in part because Fox said, we'll put more of your stuff on our big linear network. It'll be more accessible. It'll be more consistent in time and day and so forth. So, IndyCar jumped at it. And I think that's what Formula One's going to be gunning for as well, is give us a consistent network home, and we'll jump on it.
Well, if ESPN does lose
at least I hope.
Yeah, if ESPN does lose it, at least they'll still have cornhole because, as you know, it's so important because they used to break away from Formula One coverage early to go to cornhole. So anyway, all serious though,
Right.
one of the things that I loved about ESPN when it was moving to ESPN originally back in like 2017, I think maybe, that the fact that it was going to be an organic place for people to stumble across Formula One, right? Every sports bar has got, a dozen televisions with one form or another of ESPN.
On ESPN
Yeah,
channels.
and they replay the races in the afternoons on ESPN, and I thought that was one of the things I really, really liked about the fact that it was going to ESPN, that they, like you said, it was going to be on one consistent channel. It's easy to find. If you're going to look for Formula One, it's going to be on ESPN. And we're used to having to look to check more than one ESPN for if you were looking for a college football game or whatever. You got to check more than one. It's on ESPN. You just don't know which channel. But that has been what I liked about the fact that Formula One was moving to them. But it Netflix is so ubiquitous now. It's kind of like, almost everybody has Netflix now. I mean, not everybody has Paramount or Peacock or whatever, but everybody has Netflix.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that repeat airing that you talked about was in our contracts back in the ESPN days of the 70s and 80s. You get one repeat, it has to be within 24 hours, blah, 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 blah. You're not supposed to be able to change the graphics. You have to take everything that Formula One gives you. Typical Bernie Ecclestone kind of dictatorial stuff. But as for ESPN, I mean, I personally went looking for this practice or whatever session, and I wouldn't be able to get it because it was shunted down to, ESPN the Ocho to accommodate cornhole, roller disco fishing, whatever it might happen to be. So I think, as I said, one of the Formula One goals will be a consistent home where the fan can go and get everything he or she wants to see every week.
Yeah, I saw a message on YouTube. Mike Bowles, Corvette Mike, as we know him as, he asked if he could call, and I told him to call up, man. I want to find out what's going on with this Corvette shipping thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. He'll give us a good insight on that.
Everybody call up.
Yeah. In fact, let's go ahead and get our next break in real quick. And when we come back, we got lots more Formula One to talk about. Talk about Lewis Hamilton, Ferrari, all that testing. Back after these messages. All right. Let's see if I want to know what Bravo Johnny is working on. He didn't answer. He said cleaning gearboxes. I want to know.
I like Johnny Bravo better. The
Yeah.
character.
Yeah.
Hey, little mama.
Hey guys, one of my break stories I want to talk about is that I bought 2 new cars for the family in the last 3 weeks. And just so, in case you're worried, the ridiculous, stupid way to buy cars is all still out there. You can order Teslas online or you can order other cars online, but you still can go to play the game, which I happen to enjoy actually. But I have to tell you a story. We were looking at a couple of SUVs for my wife. I looked at a 2018, 2019 Acura MDX, and we test drove it, and it was shuddering. The torque converter, I could tell, was not locking up properly. It was shuddering, and I mentioned to the guy, and he immediately changed the subject. We get back to the dealership. We're going in, and he goes, "So, what did you think of the Acura?" And I was like, "I think it's broken." "What do you mean? What do I think of the Acura?"
Right? Why would I buy a car
It's
like
broken.
that?
Yes. All right, coming back.
I'm George Russell, and you're listening to Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
All right, welcome back. We're going to talk some Formula One in a minute, but right now we have a very special guest phoning in from somewhere in the United States, usually behind the wheel of a truck. We got Corvette Mike. Corvette Mike, how are you, buddy?
Hey, I'm doing well, guys. How about all of you?
Well, doing good. But really, how are you? What's going on with this Corvette shipping snafu issue? What's happening?
It totally blindsided, I'd say, 98% of the employees. First, we're talking about the company, Jack Cooper Transport, out of Kansas City.
Yep.
We had to contract several different contracts with GM. And as you've heard and spoke of last month, we also had several bunch of different manufacturers, and two of the largest, GM and Ford. And Ford was dissatisfied with something or someone and pulled all of their contractual business from us last month, which put us in a tailspin for a moment, but it didn't affect all the GM guys. And then here this weekend, it's kind of like the same thing happened again. So we got blindsided. We are all unemployed, and someone will be hauling the vehicles beginning tomorrow morning with a different company and a different driver.
Oh my gosh, Mike! I just assumed they had multiple vendors. I'm sorry, Mike. I just assumed they had multiple vendors.
Well,
yeah.
Don't cry for me. June is my retirement date, and there's guys with 20 years in that are still wondering, got young families. That's what hurts me. It just seems so sudden and out of left field that it's had some leanings towards orchestration to me and just big business that I know nothing about.
Well, yeah. God, it must be something serious for them to unilaterally just cut the deal up.
Well, what they did is with the two of them, as much power as they are, as large as they are, with our portion of business, we couldn't operate without it. So they chose to shut the doors. Oh, well, I say I'm a lucky one. I'm a lucky one, and I'm going to stay positive for all the friends that I have that are in the business and the industry and everyone else in the world itself. You never know what it's going to throw at you. You grab the popcorn, put the remote on, and watch Speed City and things.
How many trucks off the road are we talking about? How many jobs lost? Do you have any idea?
Well, with us, there was 14 of us that were Teamsters, and that's handling the cars, after they drive them out of the factory gate, and we store and stock them, and then disperse them. So there's 1,400 Teamster jobs that were lost overnight like that.
Yeah. Well, I saw the story, and it said that it was just like you said. They said, hey, you need to get those Corvettes off the truck. Like they had put them on the truck, and they were making them take them off the truck. Like, hey, what's like literally last second. It didn't make sense. It was crazy, Mike. I'm really sorry to hear that, man.
Well, I say,
I hope the Teamsters don't stand for it.
Well, there's a lot of posturing and chest beating, but all in all, somebody else is going to be doing the work in the morning.
Wow.
But I don't have to tell any of us that, nothing's guaranteed. You grab what you got, make the best of it, and try to move forward. I feel for my younger workmates, that everyone that's making a career. We love what we do. It's just like you guys love what you do. Bob's been bounced around. He's been pushed and bullied. You grab it and you grab it and you go on back after it.
Yeah, it's very true, Mike. We've all
damn right
all been there, but. Well, Mike, thank you, and I do really appreciate your attitude about it too. It's like, hey, this is life, and you just gotta roll with the punches.
The saddest thing about this, John, is I will not be able to get you the inside pictures of the ZR1, for my next Coda tickets. It's just it didn't ever work out.
Well, who knows? Like you said, who knows what's down the road for you? So. All right, Mike. Thanks, buddy. Thanks for calling in for the update. We really appreciate it.
I thank you for thinking about it.
All right. Okay. We have lots of Formula One stories that we want to touch on, but I think I want to talk about the testing. And there's a lot of people making a lot of big deal, Bob, about the lap times of Hamilton versus Leclerc versus Lando versus Oscar. But What's your take on this? Was the Pirelli tire test, of course, that just was this week.
Yeah. Well, testing should never be trusted, not because it's, there's any funny business going on, but because there are so many variables in getting the lap time out of the race car that unless you know exactly what a team is doing in terms of things like fuel load and which tire they're on, and typically in a Pirelli test, they don't mark the tires. The drivers don't know what tire they're on. They just compare them back to back and say, this one does this better than that, and so on. So now I don't read much into that at all. I think we learned more when Lewis and Charles were driving the previous year's cars under that program before Lewis crashed. And apparently, both guys were doing a pretty good job. I think there's a lot of spring in the step at Ferrari right now.
Yeah, one of the things that I took away that popped an eyebrow was when I looked at how many laps that Lewis Hamilton got to do in a Ferrari. Now, obviously not the exact same car, but he got enough laps. I think it was like the equivalent of over 2 Grand Prix. So that's that's
it is
a good
capped.
thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, he can only do a certain number before he has to stop by rule.
Yeah. And just for those who like to, it's fun to talk about the lap times. Apparently Lando had the fastest lap of the entire test, like a 1:15.2. And Piastri had a 1:15.8, and then I think Hamilton, I'm scrolling through this again, but I think Hamilton had a 1:15.9. Yeah, Hamilton had a 1:15.9, and Leclerc had also a 1:15.9 on the second day, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway.
And Hamilton was in an unfamiliar car, so
yep.
I think that says something about how Sir Lewis might go when they get in the real deal in a few weeks.
Yeah, Hamilton had 161 laps. Leclerc had 160. So yeah, like you said, they were capped. But yeah,
I saw
by the way,
fascinating article.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say it was in Barcelona. That's where it was.
Yeah, right. That's where Pirelli testing is. Pirelli, they're testing the tires for the 2026 season, and those entirely different cars. I think this article was in Motorsport or somewhere, and there are no cars like the 2026 cars for them to put them on. So they have to, try to modify the current cars as best they can to what they think the performance of the 2026 cars will be. Plus the tires are new dimensions. They're narrower front and rear, and the list goes on and on. So it must be fascinating. I wish it could be a fly on the wall in Barcelona and see what the Pirelli engineers are going through. And now they're going to be asking for constant feedback from the teams about what their simulations say the car is going to need to do its best. And then, boy, there's going to be some serious tire building at Pirelli to get ready for 2026.
Yeah, I saw that same discussion about the modifications. The first thing they did was they took weight out, right? Obviously the tires were narrower, like you said, in the front, but they took weight out.
Laid the wings down.
Yep, and because the cars are going to be lighter in 2026. But yeah, how do you simulate? Like you said, fly on the wall. I wonder what else they did to simulate, because as we know, there's going to be a lot more electric power, almost 50-50 with ICE power in 2026. I wonder if they did any modifications to the programming to do a little more electric. Who knows?
Well, maybe so. Keep in mind, they've also got to do, wet weather, soak the track and see how your treaded rain tires are going to do. They took wing out of the car because the 2026 cars are going to have a lot less downforce, but a lot more power. So it's going to be tricky.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's see we got a couple of stories here I want to talk about. Oh, this one, I almost didn't, but it's just so ridiculous that I had to say it. Bernie Ecclestone predicts Hamilton won't last 2 years at Ferrari, and not that it's just such a ridiculous statement. It's just I don't really want to hear from Bernie Ecclestone anymore, and I just don't care about his opinion personally. I just thought that why are we asking Bernie Ecclestone how long Hamilton? Why would he even put that out there? Right?
One reason, because he's going to say something outrageous. That's always been Bernie's mantra. Yeah. There's no such thing as bad publicity. Say anything. And Bernie is known for just saying anything at all. He's very Trumpian in that way. Whatever comes into his head that's going to get him attention, there you go.
Well, remember,
and the guy's 93, 94 years old.
yeah.
Mm.
I remember back in like 12 or 13 or something, he said something about how he admired Hitler for certain things. And
Well, right. Yeah.
it's like, he's just saying it for exactly what you just said. He's just saying it so somebody's going to put a headline out.
Right.
Bernie Ecclestone loves Hitler. So anyway, all right. Well, we've given that more time than I really even wanted to. So we're going to move on. It's funny. On Saturday, maybe Friday, I was just thinking, wow, isn't it about time for Drive to Survive? And I think it was like within hours, I saw the headline that Netflix announced Drive to Survive release date for season 7. Wow, 7 seasons. So it's March 7th. So just under a month. And we
remember when you and I spoke with the producer at Austin a couple of years ago, and the guy said, we didn't think we were going to get to season 2. And now here we are in 7.
I thought it was really fascinating. We got the invitation to interview the Box to Box film producer, and I'm drawing a blank on his name, but he and one other person. Anyway, we interviewed him at COTA up on the hill in Turn 1. And it was a fascinating discussion. It was really a shame they didn't promote it well enough because the audience was tiny. It was like 15, 20 people. Yeah. And he was a fascinating
I wish we'd recorded it.
I know. But yeah, that's
our new rule. We don't interview anybody at the racetrack without a camera.
Yeah. And what I liked about that, what stuck out in my mind was how he told us that he had already presented the idea to, speaking of Bernie Ecclestone, to Bernie and his team. And they wouldn't even have it, of course, as we know how Bernie felt about anyone else that wasn't paying him giant sums of money for media rights. He wasn't going to give them any camera abilities. But he said that as soon as the guys at Liberty took over, that they immediately jumped on it and said yes, and that's how it came to be. Apparently, the idea had been floating around there for a few years. But yes, March 7th.
Yeah, Bernie always hated the idea of promoting Formula One, basically. He didn't want video out there where people could access it. He had no interest whatsoever in the younger crowd or the women. He only wanted the guys who he assumed were all the car nuts with the money to buy Rolex watches and fancy vintage cars. He had a very restricted view of what Formula One should be and who his market was. You mentioned earlier about getting the rights to re-air a race, especially if it happened in the the original broadcast in the United States was at 3 a.m. Well, you'd want to be able to re-air it, at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon when people could see it. But Bernie was very, very tough on those contract issues. Very old school.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get our last break in real quick. And when we come back, we have a few more Formula One stories back after these messages. All right, let's see. David Lawrence has been saying exactly what one of the stories, I say story, one of the things I want to talk about is 2026 is going to be nuts. And I completely agree with that, David, because it's so much fun to think about all these rookies, all these new teams and teammates. Kevin Kelly and I were texting back and forth, and he was like, all right, he was quizzing me. He said, who's the team with the most experience? And I thought that was actually a pretty easy one. I said Aston Martin. But it was weird to think about Lance Stroll as being an experienced driver now. I don't know why but that's how my head went. Okay, we got Alonso, but then we got Lance Stroll. What was the next one, Kevin? You said, you said, who's next? And I said McLaren.
Yeah.
I think that may have been the next question, but yeah. But 2026 is going to be a blast. Go ahead.
I'm sensing, speaking of Lance Stroll, I'm sensing a rising tide of sentiment against Lance Stroll continuing with that team, especially if the car is good.
Oh, you know what? Let's talk about that when we come back. Here we go.
I'm Liam Lawson, and you're listening to Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
All right, welcome back. And Bob, during the break, we were talking with the YouTube folks about Lance Stroll. Bob, why don't you make that point?
Well, as I said then, I sense, and I may be wrong about this, and I certainly have nothing against Lance Stroll, except for the fact that he's the most boring interview since Bill Elliott. But I sense a rising tide of sentiment in the press that, that Lance, he is not championship material. He's an okay driver, but he's not a great driver and never will be. So if you have this coming together of his daddy's money and Adrian Newey and James Cowell and all of these terrific talents that are going to try to raise Aston Martin up to the top step of the podium, it ain't going to happen with Lance Stroll driving the other car. So, so what has to happen? And does everybody in the team have the stomach to make it happen?
Yeah. Yeah, he's been pretty he's funny. Every time I think this guy is just shouldn't even be in the sport, he'll have a good race. It seems like that happened to me at least a couple, 3 times. Yeah. And of course, what was it? Remember last year when he went off in the
well,
the
that's
gravel?
why I say he's
It's just random stuff.
Oh yeah, Brazil. He just kind of drove into the gravel like he had fallen asleep. Steve Matchett used to have an expression, good but not great. And I think he would apply that to Lance Stroll's performance to this point.
Yeah. All right. The next topic we're going to talk about, David Lawrence on YouTube brought it up and he said, 2026 is gonna be nuts, as I quote. And yes, absolutely. I mean, starting with a year ago when Lewis Hamilton announced he was moving to Ferrari, I mean, I think I know I did. And when we did a recap show, I picked that as my favorite story of 2026 to see how Lewis Hamilton does. And by the way, Juan Pablo Montoya predicted that if the car is good, that Lewis Hamilton is going to win everything, he said. And I quote, not sure exactly. I mean, that's a pretty bold statement, but there's so much to look forward to. And I know we've talked about this, but it's going to be such a good year. I mean, we're going to see, round 2 of Verstappen versus Norris, and who knows, Oscar Piastri in that mix. McLaren versus Ferrari versus Red Bull versus Mercedes, all of that. And then Hamilton versus Leclerc. I mean, that's going to be super exciting. I mean, to me, that one's not going to be a super contentious one, though. That one, you got 2 nice guys, right, Bob? I mean, don't you think that's going to be have a little different dynamic?
Yeah. Well, every pair of aces, if you will, are always going to rub up against each other. And it's up to them individually and the team, particularly the team manager, the team principal, to be vigilant about the signs that one side of the garage is fighting the other side of the garage, in the sense that it all detracts from the team performance. Ron Dennis, who founded McLaren as a power in the series, was considered a master at that sort of thing. He kept Prost and Senna under control as much as anybody could have. And there are a lot of subtleties to that. Prost talked once about the time when he was getting his butt kicked by Senna, and Prost had qualified poorly at some race. And as he sat in his car waiting for the roll off, he looked up, and there was his team principal, Ron Dennis, standing there with him, smiling at him, keeping the press at bay, yada, yada, yada. And he really appreciated that. So there are these things that the team can do to keep things under control. Of course, it helps if you're buddies, like we saw Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc at Ferrari. They were buddies. They did all kinds of stuff together. But when they got on track, we heard Sainz, if they were telling him to get out of the way and let Leclerc go through, and he didn't want to do it, he said as much, and often in language not fit for a family radio show. So, you got to pick your spots. Race hard, but fair, and be a sportsman.
Yeah, and I would think that Fred Vasseur, he has such an easygoing style. I would think that he could help facilitate that. And it's such a different dynamic, too, with Lewis Hamilton, potentially, arguably, very arguably, the greatest of all time. You could if you don't have him in that conversation, you're crazy. And Leclerc, clearly fast, right? But, he's got to have a level of respect. So it's going to be a fun one. One of my favorite ones now, though, is going to be how Liam Lawson does in the garage across from Max Verstappen, right? I mean, that's got to be, of all the rookies, I think that's the one that I'm going to watch the closest.
Well, and Jack Doohan with Pierre Gasly over at Alpine, because Doohan's got Franco Colapinto as his reserve. He's going to have to perform. So yeah, it's going to be cool.
Yeah.
It's going
All
to
right.
be very cool.
There's a couple other stories that I want to talk about here. The comments by Marcus Ericsson. Let's not forget, who spent 5 years in Formula One, and who knows, he may have a little bit of other motivations, but he said his quote was, "No doubt, Colton Herta is quick enough for Formula One." And he's saying the 24-year-old Colton Herta is undoubtedly quick enough to compete in Formula One. He said he described him as a raw talent and one of the best I've been up against. And he says, I think he doesn't even know himself how fast he can be in certain combinations. So, and in fact, in one of those commercials, I think they talked about maybe this is the year for Colton Herta. What, he finished second in IndyCar last year, right? I believe.
Yeah.
And this just, obviously the reason I'm talking about this is because Herta has been named as a potential driver for Promotion Day F1 by Cadillac for next year. And I think that that's no surprise. They've talked about Colton Herta since it was the Andretti effort, early days, that very first. I mean, what do you think about Ericsson's
that's
comments?
good. Colton hit the ground running. I mean, I watched him at one of these, school racing series, whether it's Skip Barber or someone else. Colton came in there and he was like 13, 14 years old, and he was wiping up the floor with everybody. Obviously, as Marcus said, a raw talent. And Marcus is a Indy 500 winner, and he calls Colton a raw talent, which means there are some edges that have to be rubbed off. There is some learning yet to do. I think if Colton can win the championship in IndyCar this year, or win a substantial number of races, finish up there again, win the Indy 500, I know that's a huge ask, but I think those sorts of achievements are what's going to be needed. Unless you're one of the teams that tested Colton in a Formula One car in Spain and saw that this guy really, really has talent and skills. So, I think I agree with the Indy 500 winner.
I agree with what you said about, you talked about how he started right out of the gate, right? Well, the first time I saw Colton Herta in person racing was when IndyCar came to Austin, here in Austin, to Circuit of the Americas to test. It was before the beginning of the season, and they did a test. And Colton didn't come out on track immediately, and they were probably 30 minutes or so into testing. And I saw that he was coming out on track, and I said, "Oh, that's great. Let's see how he does." And the point that I'm making is, it had been a half hour. There was lots of lap times put up there. This wasn't in the first 3 minutes. And Colton, on his first hot lap around the track, straight to the top of the timesheets. The very first time he lapped Coda in anger, he was the fastest driver out there. And I guess that would have been, 2017, something like that, whenever they first started here. So.
Who does that sound like?
Well, sounds like Max Verstappen.
Antonelli.
Oh, well, Antonelli too,
Well, Max Verstappen, Kimi Antonelli. Chip Ganassi always used to say, it's a lot easier to slow a fast driver down than to speed a slow driver up. So if you come out there and you go like stink, people are going to notice.
All right,
that's a gift.
Yeah, well, I'm getting excited to see how this plays out, but a nice little transition here. We're talking about Colton Herta going to Cadillac. There's been some discussion about another driver going to Cadillac, and it was pretty much the day after he was announced that he was leaving Red Bull, and that's Checo Perez. But his name keeps coming up, and Gunther Steiner apparently came out and said that he thinks that Cadillac should choose Checo because he's going to bring them some experience. And he said, why not? Give him a 1-year contract. He said, and let me quote him, he said, and by then, after a year of digesting the beating he took from Max and recovers from the Dutch beating, it could bring him to a better place again. I'd say he could have value for Cadillac. I thought that was an interesting take from Gunther.
Yeah, I mean, he's right up there with the new Mercedes reserve driver, Valtteri Bottas. He's a proven race winner. He worked well with that Red Bull team before what I interpret as circumstances beyond Sergio's control produced a race car that he just could not drive. In fact, Max could not drive terribly well until they got it figured out. And, the statistics last year, first half versus second half, will bear that out. So yeah, I think Sergio could be very valuable to a new team like GM, Cadillac. They also make cars in Mexico, and he's such a fan favorite that if he can get his head straight, and if he realizes, okay, I'm in the late stages of my career, but here's something I can do that will really polish my personal career spittoon, and that is help a new team become competitive.
Yeah, that would be awesome. All right, last story, because we just got a few seconds left, and that is, Bob, if you bought one of Valtteri Bottas's nude calendars, I would hold on to it, leave it in the wrapper, because apparently Toto Wolff says he's not going to allow that now that Valtteri Bottas is back on the team.
Yeah, well, yeah, it was nude, but it was always his backside.
Yeah.
All right.
I guess it's not.
All right.
Well, we used to say McLaren was corporate gray. Now I guess that's what Mercedes is. But go for it. He's going to let him keep the blonde mullet, and that's something.
That's right. He said, we're not going to take the authenticism away from Valtteri, but we're not going to let him show his backside. So, well, thanks, Bob Varsha, for helping me out today. Thanks, Johnny Green. Hope you have a good trip back to United States. He's going to be back here like Tuesday or Wednesday. And we'll see all of you guys next Sunday. Thanks for tuning in.
Oh, no! Oh, mayhem!